Hello everyone, here is Afra Siab. Today we are going to solve Cambridge IGCSE Physics Paper 2 Multiple Choice Extended held on October-November 2017 and paper code is 0625 with variant 21. So let's start from question number 1. Question number 1. A student measures the volume of the cork. He put some water into the measuring cylinder and then one glass ball. He puts the cork and then a second identical glass ball into the water as shown. There are three diagrams shown. Diagram 1 shows the first water level. Diagram 2 shows the water level after one glass ball is added. Diagram 3 shows the water level after the cork and the second glass ball are added. What is the volume of the cork? So here we have to find out the volume of the cork. In the diagram 1 we can see that initially the level of water is 50 cubic centimeter. So I write here volume of the water it is equal to 50 cubic centimeter. In the diagram 2, the water level increases when we place a glass ball in it. So it will be 60 cubic centimeter. So I write here volume of water and glass ball it is equal to 60 cubic centimeter. I just write here volume of water plus volume of ball it is equal to 60 cubic centimeter, but the volume of the water is 50 cubic centimeter. So I write here 50 plus volume of ball it is equal to 60 cubic centimeter. So the volume of the ball will be equal to 60 minus 50 which is equal to 10 cubic centimeter. In the diagram 3 we can see that when the second glass ball and the cork both of these added the volume will be 100 cubic centimeter. So I write here volume of water plus volume of two balls plus volume of the cork it is equal to 100 cubic centimeter. Now I put values here. The volume of water is given 50 plus the volume of the one ball is 10. So for the two balls here will be 20 plus volume of the cork it will be equal to 100. So volume of the cork is equal to 100 minus 50 minus 20 which is equal to 30 cubic centimeter. So this is the volume of the cork. Now we see the options. Option A 30 cubic centimeter, B 40 cubic centimeter, C 50 cubic centimeter and D 100 cubic centimeter. From here option A is correct. Question number 2. 4 balls with different masses are dropped from the heights shown. Air resistance may be ignored. Which ball has the smallest average speed? So which one of the following ball has the smallest average speed? We know that loss in potential energy is equal to gain in kinetic energy. Because the balls are dropped from certain height, so they lost potential energy and gain kinetic energy. Potential energy we know that it is equal to mgh and kinetic energy is half mv square. This m cancels by this, so gh will be equal to 1 over 2 v square and v square is equal to 2gh. We take square root on both sides, then v will be equal to 2gh with power 1 by 2. Here g is the constant, so we can simply say that v is directly proportional to square root of height. So the ball that has the smaller height, it has smaller average speed. Now we see the option. In the option A, height is 1.0 meter. B, height is 2.0 meter. In the option C, the height is 3.0 meter. And in the option D, height is 4.0 meter. So the height is smallest for the ball A. It means that the average speed will be smaller for the ball A. Option A is correct from here. Question number 3. An ice crystal falls vertically from a cloud. What happens to the acceleration of the ice crystal as it falls? Option A, it decreases because of air resistance. B, it decreases because of gravity. C, it increases because of air resistance. D, it increases because of gravity. So first of all, falling ice crystal velocity increases. Here I make ice crystal and it is fall vertically. The weight of this is acting in downward direction. With the increase in velocity, there is the air drag acting in upward direction. It also increases. So the air drag also increases. Acceleration will be decreased. And when weight of this ice crystal becomes equal to the air drag, then acceleration will be equal to 0. And this moves with the constant speed. At this moment, the ice crystal gains the terminal velocity. It means that the acceleration decreases here. Now we see the options. In the option A, it decreases because of the air resistance. So this option is correct because the acceleration decreases here. Option B and D is incorrect because acceleration does not increase or decrease due to the gravity. Acceleration remains same in the vacuum, although there is a gravity in the vacuum. Option C is also incorrect because air resistance decreases the acceleration, not increase it. So only correct option is A. Question number 4. A spring is stretched by hanging a piece of the metal from it. Which name is given to the force that stretches the spring? Option A, friction. B, mass. C, pressure. D, weight. So this is the weight that stretches the spring. From here, option D is correct. Question number 5. Which object has the greatest weight? Option A, an object of mass 10 kg in a 50 Newton per kilogram gravitational field. B, an object of mass 15 kg in a 13 Newton per kilogram gravitational field. C, an object of mass 20 kg in 9.0 Newton per kilogram gravitational field. D, an object of mass 50 kg in a 3.0 Newton per kilogram gravitational field. So here we have to find out the value of the weight. We know that weight is the product of mass and strength of the gravitational field. For the object A, I write here weight will be equal to mass is 10 kg multiplied by G is 15. So it will be equal to 150 and the unit is Newton. Weight for the object B, it will be 15 kg minus 13. This will be equal to 195 Newton. Weight for the object C is equal to 20 kg minus 9.0. This will be equal to 180 Newton. Weight for the object D is equal to 50 kg multiplied by 3.0 Newton per kilogram. So this will be equal to 150 Newton. We can see here that the weight for the object B is the largest as compared to A, C and D. From here, option B is correct. Question number 6. A uniform beam XY is 100 cm long and weight 4.0 Newton. The beam rests on a pivot 60 cm from the end X. A load of 8.0 Newton hangs from the beam 10 cm from the end X. The beam is kept balanced by the force F acting on the beam 80 cm from the end X. What is the magnitude of the force F? So here we have to find out the magnitude of this force. The pivot point is here. which is at 60 cm from the end X. There is also a load 8.0 Newton and it is at a distance of 10 cm from the X. Here we have to find out the magnitude of the force. The weight of this uniform beam is acting at the center and it is equal to 4.0 Newton. Here I use the concept that the total clockwise moment will be equal to the total anti-clockwise moment. Here the clockwise moment is caused by this force, while the anti-clockwise moment is caused by this weight and also by this load. First of all, I calculate the clockwise moment. So I write here clockwise moment will be equal to, moment is the product of force and perpendicular distance from the pivot point. Here force is acting at this point and we have to find out the distance of this force from the pivot point. This distance. It is given that the distance of the force from the point X, it is equal to 80 and the distance of the pivot point from the X, it is equal to 60. So this distance will be 80 minus 60, which is equal to 20 cm. So I write here F multiplied by 20 cm. Next, the anti-clockwise moment. It will be equal to, first of all, I consider the weight which is at this point, center of the beam. The distance of this from the pivot point will be equal to 10 cm because the total length is 100 cm and this center of beam is at distance 50 cm. The pivot point is 60 cm. So this distance will be equal to 10 cm. So I write here 4.0 multiplied by 10 plus the moment caused by the load. Here load is 8.0 Newton. So I write here 8.0 multiplied by perpendicular distance from the pivot point. So this distance will be, it is given here, the distance of the point X from this load is 10. So the distance of this load from the pivot point, this distance it will be equal to 60 minus 10, which is equal to 50 cm. So I multiply it with 50. Next, the clockwise moment will be equal to anti-clockwise moment. So I write here F multiplied by 20 will be equal to 4.0 multiplied by 10 plus 8.0 multiplied by 50, and this will be equal to 40 plus 400, which is equal to 440. This is the value of F multiplied by 20, but we have to find out the value of force. So this will be equal to 440 divided by 20. The force will be equal to 22 Newton. Now we see the options. Option A 8.0 Newton, B 18 Newton, C 22 Newton. From here option C is correct. Question number 7. The diagram shows 4 table lamps resting on a table. The position of the center of mass of each lamp is labeled X. Which lamp is the most stable? So the lamp will be more stable for which the center of mass is lower. In the option B and D, we can see here center of mass is lying at the lowest point. So we skip option A and C. In the option B, we can see that there is a large base, and in the option D, the base is smaller. So the more stability comes with the larger base of the lamp. From here, option B is correct. For the more stability, the center of mass should be lower and there will be the large base. Question number 8. The diagram shows an incomplete scale drawing to find the resultant of two forces, 10 Newton force acting at a point in the direction shown. what is the magnitude of the resultant force? So here we have to find out the magnitude of the resultant force. There are two forces, 10 Newton and 10 Newton. First of all, we have to draw the resultant, which is the diagonal line. So I am going to draw. So this vector is basically the resultant. I write here R. Now we have to find out the magnitude of this resultant force. So I write here R is equal to square root F1 square plus F2 square plus 2 F1 F2 cos theta, where cos theta is the angle between both of these forces. F1 and F2 both of these are 10 Newton. So resultant will be equal to 10 square plus 10 square plus 2 10 multiplied by 10, and there will be cos of 45 degree because the angle between both of these is 45. The resultant then will be equal to 18 Newton. Now we see the options. Option A 7.5 Newton, B 8.6 Newton, C 18 Newton, D 20 Newton. From here, option C is correct. Question number 9. A tennis ball of mass 0.060 kilogram travels horizontally at a speed of 25 meter per second. The ball hits the tennis racket and rebounds horizontally at a speed of 40 meter per second. The ball is in contact with the racket for 50 milliseconds. What force does the racket exert on the ball? So here we have to find out the magnitude of the force. First of all, this ball is traveling at 25 meter per second and then it rebounds back at the speed of 40 meter per second. So here I use impulse, which is equal to multiplication of the force and time, and it is also equal to change in momentum delta P. From here we have to find out the value of force. It will be equal to delta P by T, where delta P is the change in momentum. So I write here M V minus U divided by T. So when this ball collides with the racket and then rebound back, it comes in the opposite direction. So there will be minus sign with the velocity. So I write here F is equal to mass is given, which is 0.060 multiplied by V. V is 40 meter per second minus U is 25 meter per second, and it will be minus 25 because of the opposite direction, divided by time is given 50 millisecond, and there will be 10 की power minus 3. So force will be equal to 78 Newton. Now we see the option. Option A 0.018 Newton, B 0.078 Newton, C 18 Newton, D 78 Newton. From here, option D is correct. Question number 10. The diagram shows the path of the stone that is thrown from X and reaches its maximum height at Y. So at the point Y, the height is maximum. The stone gains 10 joule of gravitational potential energy as it moves from X to Y. It means that gravitational potential energy at the point Y is equal to 10 joule. The stone has 2.0 joule of kinetic energy at Y. At the point Y, kinetic energy is equal to 2.0 joule. Air resistance can be ignored. How much kinetic energy did the stone have immediately after it was thrown at X? So here we have to find out the kinetic energy at the point X. First of all, when the stone is thrown at the point X, all of the energy is kinetic energy. Here kinetic energy is given which is equal to 2.0 joule. When the stone is thrown from the point X, then the kinetic energy losses and it converts into gravitational potential energy. It means that at the point X, all of the kinetic energy will be equal to the potential energy that is at the point Y. So I write here kinetic energy will also be equal to 10 joule. So the total kinetic energy will be equal to 10 plus 2.0, which is equal to 12 joule, which is at the point X. From here, option D is correct. Question number 11. A motor is used to lift a load of 40 Newton and it is lifted through 0.50 meter. The load is 40 Newton. The power of the motor is 40 watt and the system is 20% efficient. How long does it take the motor to lift the load through 0.50 meter? So here we have to find out the time. Efficiency is given and the power input is also given. So I write here efficiency is equal to output power divided by input power. Efficiency is 20%, so I write here 20 by 100. This will be equal to output power divided by input power is 40 watt. So the output power will be equal to 8 watt. We have to find out time. We know that power is equal to work over time and work in this case will be F multiplied by D divided by time. So time will be equal to force multiplied by distance divided by output power. Force is given, which is 40 Newton, multiplied by distance is 0.50 divided by power, which is 8 watt. So time will be equal to 2.5 second. Now we see the options. Option A 0.50 second, B 2.5 second. So option B is correct from here. Question number 12. A student runs up a flight of stairs. Which information is not needed to calculate the rate at which the student is doing work against the gravity? So the rate at which the student is doing work is basically equal to power. We know that power is equal to work over time and work in this case will be equal to gravitational potential energy. So I write here gravitational potential energy divided by time. It will be equal to mgh divided by time, where m is the mass, g is gravitational field strength, h is height and t is time. Now we see the options. Option A, the height of the flight of stairs. B, the length of the flight of the stairs. C, the time taken to run up the stairs. D, the weight of the student. So first of all, this mg is basically equal to weight multiplied by height divided by time. It means that weight, height and time is required in order to calculate power, but not the length. So option B is correct from here. Question number 13. Diagram shows a simple mercury barometer. So there is a mercury barometer. Which length is used to find the value of the atmospheric pressure? Here we have to find out the length which is used to find the value of the atmospheric pressure. So this length will be equal to the level of the liquid inside this tube. The top level is at 86 centimeter, while here the reading is 12 centimeter. So the length will be equal to 86 minus 12, which is equal to 74 centimeter. So this length is required to find out the value of the atmospheric pressure. Now we see the option. Option A 12 centimeter, B 74 centimeter. So option B is correct from here. Question number 14. Diagram shows a glass flask sealed with a small volume of the mercury in a glass tube. When the flask is gently warmed, the mercury rises up the tube. What is the main cause of the movement of the mercury? Here we can see that there is a glass flask and there is a air inside this. There is mercury. When we gently warm the flask, then the air expands on heating. Hence, due to the thermal expansion of the air, the mercury rises up in the tube. Now we see the options. Option A, expansion of the air in the flask. B, expansion of the glass flask. C, expansion of the glass tube. D, the expansion of the mercury. So the mercury rises up because of the expansion of the air in the flask. Option A is correct from here. Question number 15. A pollen grain in a beaker of still water is viewed through the microscope. Which diagram shows the most likely movement of the pollen grain? So the movement of the pollen grain will be random. In the option A, there is a random motion which shows that particle of the pollen grain can go in any side. In the option B, there is regular pattern. Also in the C and D, there are regular pattern. So option A is correct because it is a random. The motion of the pollen grain is random. Question number 16. The diagram shows an air-filled rubber toy. A child sits on the toy and its volume decreases. The temperature of the air in the toy does not change. Here the temperature remains same, but the volume decreases. How does the air pressure in the toy change and why? Pressure and reason. Option A, decreases, air molecules move more slowly. B, decreases, air molecules strike the rubber less frequently. Option C, increases, air molecules move more quickly. D, increases, air molecules strike the rubber more frequently. So first of all, volume decrease, but the temperature remains same. What will be the effect on the air pressure? This is according to Boyle's law that volume is inversely proportional to pressure when the temperature is constant. So when the volume decreases, air pressure should be increased. So here pressure increase. And we also have to describe the reason for increase in pressure. Because when the volume decreases, then the molecules inside this rubber strikes the rubber frequently, due to which the air pressure increase. From here, option D is correct. Question number 17. A strip of the iron and a strip of the brass are firmly attached to each other along their entire length. This combination is a bimetallic strip. This bimetallic strip is heated and is bent as shown. So there is the bending of this bimetallic strip. The bimetallic strip is now cooled and becomes straight again. What causes the bimetallic strip to become straight again? Option A, the brass contracts more than the iron. B, the brass expands more than the iron. C, the iron contracts more than the brass. D, the iron expands more than the brass. So first of all, there are two materials, iron and brass. Brass expands more as compared to the iron. I write here, brass expands more as compared to iron. When the bimetallic strip is heated, which is shown in this figure, by heating the bimetallic strip, the brass expands more than the iron. That's why the brass bends towards the iron. It means that from here, option B is correct. The brass expands more than the iron. So I circle option B. Question number 18. An aluminium block has a mass of 200 gram. The specific heat capacity of the aluminium is 900 joule per kilogram per degree C. How much energy is needed to rise the temperature of the block from 20 degrees C to 110 degrees C? So here we have to find out energy. E is equal to mc delta T. Here m is the mass which is given 200 gram. But the specific heat capacity is 900 joule per kilogram. The unit of mass here is kilogram. It means that we have to convert the mass of the aluminium block into kilogram. So I write here 200 divided by 1000 and unit will be kilogram. Multiply by C, it is 900 joule per kilogram and degree C. Multiply by change in temperature. So this will be 110 minus 20. So energy E will be equal to 16,200 joule. Now we see the options. Option A 2.0 joule, B 200 joule, C 16,200 joule. So C option is correct from here. Question number 19. Which statement about the convection currents is correct? Option A. Convection currents occur because when cold liquids contract and become more dense. B. Convection currents occur because when the warmed liquids expand and become more dense. C. Convection currents only occur in the liquids. D. Convection currents only occurs in the solid and liquid. First of all, liquids expand on the heating and contract on cooling. It means that when the liquid contract, then it will become more dense. From here, option A is correct because this shows that the convection occurs when the cold liquid contract and it becomes more dense. Question number 20. The diagram represents the plane wavefronts of the water wave about to strike a solid barrier. Which diagram shows the position of the wavefronts after reflection at the barrier? So these wavefronts are reflected by this barrier and we have to show the position of the wavefront after reflection by this barrier. So first of all, I draw the normal on this solid barrier. This is the normal line on this barrier. Next, when the wavefront comes towards the barrier, this blue line basically represents the wavefronts that reach on the solid barrier. And the laws of reflection is that the angle of incidence must be equal to the angle of reflection. So this ray will be reflected horizontally in this direction. Now we see the options. Option A, here the reflected wavefronts are vertically, so this is incorrect. In the option C, the reflected wavefronts are horizontally because we have to consider that the angle of incidence will be equal to angle of reflection. So only option C is correct from here because the position of this wavefront is similar to the wavefront that I draw here. So option C is correct from here. Question number 21. Diagram shows an object in the front of the plane mirror. A ray of the light from the object is incident on the mirror. Through which point does the reflected ray pass and at which point is the image of the object formed? Object is at this location and the ray from the object is fall on the plane mirror. And the plane mirror reflect this light. So after reflection by this mirror, this line pass through the point P. I will draw this. So the ray looks like that after reflection by the plane mirror. It means that the point through which the reflected ray pass is point P. First of all, we see the options. Point through which the reflected ray passes. Point at which image is formed. Option A, P and R. B, P and S. C, Q and R. D, Q and S. The point through which the reflected ray passes is the point P. Next, we also have to check that where the image is formed. We can see here the image by the plane mirror is formed by extrapolation of this ray. Now I am going to extend this ray in the backward direction. It meets at the point R. It means that the location of the image is at point R. From here, option A is correct. Question number 22. A laser is a source of light with a single frequency. Which description of this type of light is correct? Option A, dispersed. B, focused. C, monochromatic. D, refracted. So monochromatic light is the light which has single frequency, and laser is a source of light which also have the single frequency. From here, option C is correct, which shows that monochromatic. Question number 23. Visible light, X-rays and microwaves are all components of the electromagnetic spectrum. Which statement about the waves is correct? Option A. In the vacuum, microwaves travel faster than the visible light and have a shorter wavelength. B. In the vacuum, microwaves travel at the same speed as visible light and have the shorter wavelength. C. In the vacuum, X-rays travel faster than the visible light and have the shorter wavelength. D. In the vacuum, X-rays travel at the same speed as the visible light and have a shorter wavelength. In the vacuum, all of the waves travel with the same speed, which is equal to speed of light. Next, we have to check that which one of the following has the shortest or greater focal length. In the option B, here it is given that microwaves travel with the same speed as the visible light. So option B, R. Option D, it might be correct according to the speed. Next, we also have to check the wavelength. The wavelength of the microwave is larger as compared to the visible light. So option B is incorrect. In the option D, the wavelength of the X-rays is smaller as compared to the visible light. So this option is correct. From here, D is correct. Question number 24. The moon is at 380,000 km from the earth. A laser light beam is directed from the earth to the moon. The beam is deflected back to the earth. How long does it take for the light to travel to the moon and back to the earth? Option A, 1.27 millisecond. B, 2.53 millisecond. C, 1.27 second. And D, 2.53 seconds. So here is basically the process of echo. The distance between the moon and earth is given, which is equal to D, and it is 380,000 km. Next, suppose that here is earth and moon is here. The laser light from the earth is directed towards the moon, and then it is reflected back and comes towards the earth. It means that it covers distance which is double of the D. So there will be D prime, which is equal to 2D. So I write here distance will be equal to 2D, which is equal to 2 multiplied by 380,000 km. Also, these waves moves with the speed of light. So C will be equal to 3.0 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. So we can easily find out time by using C is equal to D by T, where T is equal to D prime by C. So time will be equal to 2 multiplied by 380,000 multiplied by 10 to the power 3. This is because of the kilo. Divided by C, 3.0 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. From here, time t will be equal to 2.53 seconds. So option D is correct from here. Question number 25. Which wavefront is traveling at a speed closest to that of the sound wave traveling through a solid? Option A, one that moves 10 meter in 0.01 second. Here we have to find out the speed. So I use V is equal to D by T because here distance and time is given. So VA will be equal to 10 divided by 0.01, which is equal to 1000 meter per second. Option B, one that moves 50 meter in 0.5 seconds. So I write here VB is equal to 50 divided by 0.5. So this will be equal to 100 meter per second. Option C, one that moves 100 meter in 100 seconds. Option C, one that moves 1000 meter in 100 seconds. So I write here VC is equal to 1000 divided by 100, which is equal to 10 meter per second. Option D, one that moves 2000 meter in 2000 seconds. So V will be equal to 2000 divided by 2000, which is equal to 1 meter per second. The speed of the sound wave in the solid is almost from 4000 to 5000 meter per second. Now we can see here that the speed for option A, which is 1000 meter per second, is closest to the speed of the sound through the solid as compared to B, C and D. From here, option A is correct. Question number 26. Different waves travel through the air. Which wave have the greatest difference in speed? Option A, ultrasound waves and sound waves. B, ultrasound waves and ultraviolet waves. C, ultraviolet waves and light waves. D, ultraviolet waves and radio waves. From here, option B is correct because the greatest difference in the speed for the ultrasound waves and ultraviolet waves. So option B is correct from here. Question number 27. A student stands 180 meter in the front of vertical flat cliff and bangs together two pieces of the wood to make a short loud sound. A time records the echo of the sound is 1.5 seconds after the piece of wood are banged together. Based on this result, what is the speed of the sound? So here we have to find out the speed of sound. Here is a student at this location while the flat cliff is here. The distance between them is 180 meter. So the sound travels from the student towards the cliff and then it is reflected back because here is the phenomena of echo. So distance will be double. I write here d prime is equal to 2d, which is equal to 2 multiplied by 180 meter. Next time is given, which is 1.5 second. So speed v will be equal to d prime by t. This will be 2 multiplied by 180 divided by time 1.5. So v will be equal to 240 meter per second. From here, option B is correct. Question number 28. A train of the steel nails and a train of iron nails hang from a strong magnet. There is a strong magnet and train of the steel nails and train of the iron nails are shown. The trains are then carefully removed from the magnet. What happens to the train? Option A, both trains fall apart. B, both trains stay together. C, only the train of the iron nails falls apart. D, only the train of the steel nails falls apart. Train of the iron nail fall apart because iron acts as a temporary magnet, while the train of the steel nail does not fall apart as the steel acts as a permanent magnet. So from here, C option is correct, which shows that only the train of iron nails fall apart. Question number 29. How can a permanent magnet can be demagnetized? So here we have to demagnetize a permanent magnet. Option A, cool the magnet for a long time. B, place it next to another magnet. C, slowly pull it out of the coil connected to the AC supply. D, slowly pull it out of the coil connected to the DC supply. So the permanent magnet can be demagnetized by slowly pull it out of the coil connected to the AC power supply, not with the DC. From here, option C is correct. Question number 30. A positively charged rod is held near to but not touching an uncharged metal sphere. The sphere is briefly connected to the earth. The rod is removed. Which statement about the charge on the sphere is correct? First of all, we have a metal sphere which has no charge, and there is a positively charged rod close to this sphere but not touching this. It has positive charge. This metal sphere is connected with the earth. So when this positively charged rod is held near to the uncharged metal sphere, then due to the attraction, the electrons from the earth, negative charges moves towards the sphere and sphere become negatively charged. Now we see the option. Option A, it is charged negatively because negative charges have moved from the earth to the sphere. B, it is charged negatively because the positive charges have moved from the sphere to the earth. C, it is charged positively because the negative charges have moved from the sphere to the earth. D, it is charged positively because positive charges have moved to the earth from the sphere. From here, option A is correct, which shows that it is negatively charged and the negative charges move from the earth to the sphere. Question number 31. The diagram shows a circuit with a gap between point P and Q. 4 pieces of the metal wire of the same material are connected in turn between the points P and Q in the circuit. The table gives the diameters and the length of the wire. In which wire is the current the largest? So which one of the following wire has the largest current? We know that largest current means smaller resistance. And we can easily find out resistance by using R is equal to resistivity length over area. We know that area is equal to pi r square. So I write here resistivity length over pi r square, where r is the radius and radius will be half of the diameter. So I write here resistance will be equal to 4 resistivity length over pi d square. It means that resistance is directly proportional to length and it is inversely proportional to diameter square. So the wire that has larger length and smaller diameter, it has larger resistance. In this question, we have to find that which one of the following wire has the current largest. So the resistance should be smaller. I write here resistance smaller. Smaller resistance is for the wire that has length small and large diameter. Now we see the options. Option A 0.10, which is diameter length 1.0. B 0.10 2.0. C 0.20 1.0. D 0.20 2.0. So the length is smaller, which is for A and C option, while the diameter is larger for C and D. It means that length is smaller and diameter is larger for the C wire. So option C is correct from here. For the wire C, the current is larger because for this wire resistance is smaller. Question number 32. A torch has a simple circuit with 3.0 volt battery and a lamp. There is a 20 milliampere current in the lamp. how much energy is transferred to the lamp in 5.0 minutes. So here we have to find out the transfer of energy. We know that power is equal to potential difference multiplied by time. So power will be equal to V cross I, and also power is the rate of transfer of energy. So there will be E by T. Now we compare both of these. E by T will be equal to V multiplied by I. From here energy is equal to V multiplied by I multiplied by time. So energy will be V is given 3.0 multiplied by current 20 into 10 की power minus 3 multiplied by time. Time is given 5 minutes and we have to convert into seconds. So there will be 5.0 multiplied by 60 seconds. Then energy E will be equal to 18 joule. Now we see the option. Option A 0.30 joule, B 18 joule. So B option is correct from here. Question number 33. A student connects the circuit shown. Which graph shows the variation with the time of the current in the resistor? Here in this circuit we can see that there is AC power supply, a resistor and a diode. The function of the diode is to convert the alternating current into direct current. Now we see the option. Option A is incorrect. In the option B we can see that positive cycle is shown and negative cycle is blocked. Again positive cycle is shown and negative cycle is blocked. So B option is correct. In the option C we can see here it is the alternating current waveform. So this is also incorrect. Option D is also incorrect. Only correct option is B. Question number 34. The diagram shows a circuit with a fixed resistor connected in series with a thermistor and a ammeter. Which row shows how the temperature changes affect the resistance of the thermistor and the current in the circuit. So here we have to change the temperature. What will be the effect on the resistance of the thermistor and current in the circuit? I suppose that the temperature decrease. I write here temperature decrease. Then the resistance of the thermistor increase. I write here resistance increase. By increasing the resistance of the thermistor, the resistance of the whole circuit increase. So R total will increase. As a result, the current in the circuit decrease. By decreasing the current in the circuit, the ammeter reading also decrease. Now we see the options. Temperature, resistance of the thermistor, current in the circuit. Option A decreases, decreases, increases. B decreases, increases, decreases. When the temperature decreases, the resistance of the thermistor increase. As a result, the current in the circuit decrease. From here, option B is correct. Question number 35. What does the symbol shown represent? There is a symbol. Option A AND gate, B a NOR gate, C NOT gate, D OR gate. So this symbol is basically for the AND gate. Option A is correct. Question number 36. The diagram shows a copper wire XY connected to a resistor. The wire is moved in the magnetic field between the poles of a magnet. There is an induced current in the wire from X to Y, in which labeled direction is the wire moving. So in which direction the wire will move? Here we can see that the direction of the magnetic field is from north pole towards the south pole. This is the direction of the magnetic field. Also the induced current in the wire is from X to Y. It means that current is inducing in downward direction. We have to find out the direction in which wire move. First of all, the EMF is induced by the motion with respect to the magnetic field, and this EMF is known as motional EMF. I write here motional EMF. This will be equal to VBL sin theta. Here L is the length, B is magnetic field, and V the speed with which the wire is moving. According to the Fleming right hand rule, the direction of current is in this direction while the magnetic field is in this direction. According to the Fleming right hand rule, the D option is the direction of the wire movement. In the direction D, the wire will move, so D is correct from here. Question number 37. The graph shows how the voltage induced across a coil changes with the time as the coil spins in the magnetic field. Which graph shows what happens when the coil spins more quickly? All the graphs are drawn to the same scale. So here the coil spins more quickly. What happens to the voltage? When the coil of the wire rotates in the magnetic field, then it produces the current, which changes the direction after each 180 rotation. So there will be the torque that is equal to NIBA sin theta, and the EMF that is induced here, it will be equal to N omega AB sin theta. Here when the loop is vertical, angle will be equal to 0 degree. In this case, torque will be 0. But when the loop is horizontal, angle is 90 degree. So the torque will be maximum, which is equal to NIBA, because sine of 90 degree is equal to 1. From here, we can see that the EMF is proportional to omega. It means that when the coil spins faster, then the EMF also increase. From here, option B and A, both of these are incorrect because here the voltage remains same. Now we see the option C. Option C is correct. Option D is also incorrect. So only the correct option is C. Question number 38. Emissions X and Y from the radioactive materials are passed through the magnetic field. The diagram showing the direction of the emissions, the direction of the magnetic field, and the effect of emission. Which type of the emission is X and which type of the emission is Y? So there is emission X and emission Y. The emission X is deflected less, but there is large deflection or large bending for the emission Y. We know that here only those particles deflected by the magnetic field that has charge. It means that gamma rays is neutral, so gamma rays does not deflect. The emission X and Y is not for the gamma rays. Now we see the options. Option A, alpha particles, beta particles. B, alpha particles, gamma rays. C, beta particles, alpha particles. D, beta particles, gamma rays. From here, option B and D, both of these are incorrect because here is gamma rays. But emission X, there is less bending, but for the emission Y, there is large bending. The large bending occur only for the particle that is less massive. The mass of the alpha particle is larger as compared to the beta particle. So the emission X is basically for the alpha particle, while the emission Y is basically for the beta particle. Now we see the option. In the option A, emission X is for alpha particle while the emission Y is for beta particle. So option A is correct from here. Question number 39. What is meant by the half-life of a radioactive isotope? Option A, half of the time taken for all the original nuclei to decay. B, the time taken for half of the original nuclei to decay. C, the time taken for the charge of all the nuclei to halve. D, the time taken for the mass of each nuclei to halve. So half-life is basically the time taken for half of the original nuclei to decay. Option B is correct from here. Question number 14. The rate of emission of a radioactive source is measured until the reading reaches the background rate of 20 counts per minute. The results are shown. Here is the rate of emission, counts per minute, and also the time is given in minutes. What is the best estimate of the half-life of the source? So here we have to find out the half-life of the source. So first of all, I consider t is equal to 0 minute and time t is equal to 10 seconds. Next I have to find out the corresponding count rate at t is equal to 0 and 10 minutes. So at t is equal to 0, the count rate is 200 counts per minute, while at t is equal to 10 minutes, count rate is 110 counts per minute. So I write here time and count rate. When time t is equal to 0 and time t is equal to 10 minutes, count rate is 200 and here it is 110. These are the count rate when we also have at the background count rate. The count rate without background radiation. I am going to write here count rate without background radiation. As the background count rate is given 20 counts per minute, so there will be 200 minus 20, which is equal to 180. Next there is 110 minus 20, which is equal to 90. Half-life is the time during which the count rate remains half. It means that initially when the count rate is 180, when the first half-life passes, count rate will be 180 divided by 2, which is equal to 90. So the count rate remains 90, which is given here. It means that half-life is equal to 10 minutes. When 10 minutes pass, then the count rate remains half. From here, option A is correct.